David, can you describe the methodology you typically deploy in your leadership coaching work?
An executive coaching relationship is a high trust relationship. And in order to embark on that, the best starting point I've found is to simply have a conversation with a potential new client. And in the course of that conversation, we're able to explore why the potential client has an interest in coaching at all. What do they hope to gain from that experience, whether they've done it before? What did they find if they did do it before most useful? And how will we manage our time? And also how we will mutually agree upon certain ground rules, such as show up, come prepared, be honest and open. And in my work with the client, if we do engage with the client, I will move them through a process, a methodology in the form of, we'll call it an arc, in which the starting point will be to look at how the client is wired and how they're perceived. The wiring comes through a behavioral assessment, and that allows us to determine the extent to which they show up with a degree of emotional intelligence. How do they deal with workplace pressures, and how do they function in the face of ongoing stress if they do face that in their work? How do they exhibit emotional intelligence in front of people who are significantly different than them, with cultures and backgrounds that are less familiar to them than they may be accustomed to in other settings? The ability for them to listen and respond in ways that are supportive of others. So that's the early work, is a behavioral assessment work. And we can talk about that further in other video sessions. Then I also look at how the person is perceived. How are they wired? How are they perceived? That perception comes through stakeholder feedback. And that stakeholder feedback is based on generally about 10 different leadership attributes that I'll seek feedback from those critical stakeholders on, such as their strategic management skills, their process management skills, their communication style, the extent to which they exhibit behaviors that people find have high integrity and they are considered ethical, the extent to which they value differences in others, and so forth. So roughly 10 different leadership attributes. They define who their key stakeholders are, those critical relationships that are mutually reliant on each other for success. I ask them to share those behavioral attributes with their boss to confirm that their boss would say, yeah, those are the key attributes for your role, or they may want to massage them a bit. This also ensures that their boss has kind of weighed in and is supportive of the process, as well as sharing with their boss, these are my critical stakeholders. The value in doing that for me and for my client is to ensure that the client doesn't necessarily leave someone out who may represent a bit of a strained relationship. We want feedback under those circumstances if it's a critical stakeholder relationship, as I defined earlier. And the boss sometimes may state, you should include this person or that person to more fully represent the range of stakeholders that you deal with on a regular basis. So we do that early work in the course of the relationship of coaching. Typically, I meet with a client every 2 weeks. This gives a range of time so that the client may come into the next session with something that's top of mind for them. So we don't have to deal directly with the content of the moment. Say, if we're still debriefing the behavioral assessment, we allow for a ground rule, which is established at the outset of our relationship, in which the coachee, the client, may come in and say, can I share something with you? I had a weird experience with my colleague or my external client or my boss or my employee, or any other condition that may arise that's really top of mind, almost distracting for them. And that's the work of coaching, is to explore how the client may be dealing with relationship issues of the moment or other challenges they may face that could take on a number of different forms. So that's always a ground rule of our coaching relationship while we're still working through this arc of activity, how they're wired, how they are perceived, and then from our work of behavioral self assessment, stakeholder feedback, and looking at the themes that have emerged, we move towards ultimately the development of a professional development plan. Because my work is the work of leadership coaching. I'm not a career coach, I'm not a life coach, whatever that may mean. I'm a leadership coach. So I'm helping people leaders and operational leaders up their practice of leadership so that by extension, their teams can perform at a higher level due to the quality of the leadership they receive. And by extension, their company overall performs at a higher level. So that's an intended outcome. There should be a return on investment that comes from our work together, our time together. It should ultimately result in they performing at a higher level as a leader, and they ultimately have higher performing teams and a company at large, as noted. So that's the methodology. That's the intended outcome. And that's the work product, by the way, is that professional development plan that can run concurrent with their operational goals for the year. So achieve these things and develop professionally, running side by side throughout the course of a fiscal business year.